Hi everyone and welcome to the Hair Loss Show. Good to see you, Russell.
Good to see you, Vikram.
In today's episode we're going to talk about a corrective case, and this is unfortunately something that we see all too common and often in our practices these days. Yes. We have people going to clinics where they are being operated on by people who haven't been trained in the process and how to do that. And that's happening both locally where we are and also in clinics overseas as well. And the issue is that when that happens and people are left with an unnatural or certainly less than perfect result, it can be absolutely devastating. And so I wanted to highlight this by talking and taking this opportunity, because it's really good to have both of us here to discuss this and go, right, okay, how would you manage this? How would what's my planning process in that? And we can sort of kind of pick off each other's brains and talk about this. I want to preface this as well by saying I'd really like to thank the patient in question who has allowed me to put on this picture as well, because he understands that it is a learning process as well. So I've taken a video, and we'll cut to that in a second, and I bring us back now and highlight what we've got here on the picture, and we can talk about what the issues are and what I think we can potentially do, and then you sort of step in and go, right, how would you handle it? One thing I would like to mention over here before we get started, and it's just probably the printout, there's this area here that looks a little bit empty. That's not the case. That's probably just the lighting on the photograph. Actually, that area has reasonable density. When we look at this hairline, again, this person's absolutely devastated by the outcome from this. We've got a hairline, and yes, it's if we look at the lowest point of the hairline here, it is a little bit low, but that's probably the least of the issues. The main issue is if we look in these corners here, the angle of the hairs are coming out incorrectly. They're coming out almost 90 degrees to the skin. Sometimes some of the hairs are going in a backward direction. This person has had, not sure, somewhere between 2,000 to 2,500 grafts harvested, and we can see that the growth certainly in this area is poor. This is over a year after being transplanted, so we're not expecting a huge amount of further growth. We can see that the hairline, yes, it's a little bit smooth, but the problem is under magnification, what we can see, the density is poor, and also you're getting multi-hair grafts in that frontal hairline. Again, which gives you an unnatural look from there. If we look at the donor area, and I don't have a picture of that for you right now, 2,500 grafts is not a massive amount in the grand scheme of things, but what they've done is that they've harvested just from the back of the head. And so in that area,
it looks a bit thin.
It looks a bit thin. All right. So if you're taking any more grafts, you have to be a little bit creative about how you're getting the hairs. The top, the mid, and the crown look good.
And how old is our patient?
Our patient is in his late 20s. Late 29, I think.
Well, there's some pretty rookie errors here, isn't there?
Correct. So I think from his perspective, he's unhappy about the look, general look, the density, and the fact that everyone can spot that he's had a hair transplant. Right. So, I mean, my original plan, and this is what we've discussed with the patient, is there are some hairs in the frontal, some grafts, follicular units in the frontal hairline that are going in the wrong direction. We've got to remove those. We've got to create a new hairline with single hair grafts to give that natural look, put some distractor hairs there. We've got to try and fill some density there. We want to try and repurpose some of the grafts that are going in the wrong direction. That's a large number if we're harvesting all of those. But I suspect it will not be enough to fill and give full density through there, and so we have to be careful about how and where we're harvesting from. So this is the plan. Talk me through what your thoughts are. How would you manage it?
Okay. Well, having done a few of these procedures where we try and remove the FUE grafts, which is what this patient's had, one by one, it can be very tricky because it really depends upon whether there's curvature of the grafted hairs, whether there's splay of the hairs, meaning that they don't actually sort of sit parallel to each other, they splay out under the skin. And you can have a partial success getting them out, particularly the bigger ones, but not necessarily a great success doing it. I think in here, my brain's ticking over with an idea that probably wouldn't initially appeal to the patient, but might appeal to him if I explain it. So one of the attractions of FUE surgery for these guys is the so-called lack of visible scarring on the back of the head, which is only true, as you just pointed out, if you don't over-harvest any particular area. That said, you can, if it's surgery nonetheless, right? You're cutting the skin, you're creating holes, you're creating scarring. When I look at this, when I look at the issue, which is we've got maybe a little bit of room to play here with the hairline in the sense that it's 6.8, which is maybe a little bit low. We've got a bare patch in behind, and we've got some grafts in here that are in the wrong direction. I would take a strip behind the hairline. I would cut out the bald area here, cut out a number of these grafts are wrongly directed like that in a strip. Do maybe a little bit of undermining here and then lift this up, right? Now the big advantage here is that it'll be a lot easier to dissect these grafts out under the microscope if it's a strip than if you try and do it by FUE. That's one thing. So these are the poorly directed grafts, and we can repurpose them. If we get them out, they can go in the right place in the right angle. The second advantage is taking out this bald area here and not having to graft it. The third advantage is by lifting this up, you get to put the single hairs and the scatter zone in front here and get a more natural instead of that linear
So you're talking about taking a strip from here through down there and then up here?
A U-shaped strip.
Right.
Right, and try and get the really bad stuff out. And then you'll get some lift back here. You could get a centimetre, you could get 1.5 centimetres without putting any tension on it. And that means you can repurpose a lot of grafts and lift this up so that you can reset the hairline. Because if you do it all the way to the edge, everything will lift.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, this is going to go up 1 centimetre. This is going to go up. This is going to go up. And then you can repurpose the hairline. Yes, it would leave you a linear scar, but if you place the grafts, if you place it correctly in here and put grafts in front of it and through it, you can cover the scar very adequately. And I think that's probably what I'm thinking would be my offer to the patient.
And you could always come back a year later once the scar is, and then top it up.
And the other thing is that by doing this, I'm saving a lot of his donor hairs on the back of the head. By being successfully being able to repurpose these ones, I'm saving, because he's a young man, and obviously I'd want him to be on meds, to try and stop further hair loss, which is typical. So this is the Norwood 3 pattern with the recesses. There's no guarantee this is going to survive later in life. We don't know that. We have to plan for that, so we want to leave something on the back for it. But I think it's it's basically I'd do a strip in the recipient area.
That's well, no, look, I'd not thought about it, and I think that's a really good idea. It's just doing that to reduce the
bald area, take the poorly directed grafts out,
forehead
lift
reduction,
the hairline, so you can just by lifting everything up, you've got more room to play here without making it an artificially low hairline to make it more natural.
I think the fundamental sort of point to take home really is that it is immensely difficult to fix.
Yes, it's not for beginners. If if you are unhappy with a very poor, in your opinion, result, you do your selection this time very carefully to find a very experienced surgeon and have an in-depth conversation about them as to what's possible, because this is not for beginners.
No, but also, I mean, again, and going even a step further back, frontal hairline work is not necessarily for beginners as well, because these are all beginner mistakes, isn't it? Poor
So,
growth,
well, this is
poor
part
direction.
This is part of the
poor
problem.
design.
One of the overseas countries that's very popular at the moment is instituting a law this year that people who do transplants in that country have to have undertaken a, wait for it, 7-day training course.
Oh, there you go.
7 days. So finally there's a regulation about training, but 7 days.
Right.
So, I really don't feel there's much comfort to be had in that. But we see this all the time.
Yes.
I was on the plane coming down today and I saw clearly a result that would have come from an overseas clinic because the hairline shape was inappropriate and low in a man with a lot of balding going on, and the FUE harvest had gone literally to the last donor hair, right on the border of the bald spot, and he looked to be in his 30s, and I think he's going to have what we call a temporary transplant.
Right.
So he's going to have a lot of patchiness develop in
So
the next 5 or 10
if the
years.
balding area extends into that,
You lose the grafts,
you lose the grafts.
and you even make the dot scars more visible.
because they can be
But it was
outside.
like every mistake that you could make by being over-aggressive was sitting right there in the patient, who might be happy at the moment, by golly, in 5 or 10 years' time, it's going to look wrong.
And this is an issue that we're also seeing. And again, better to be forewarned and forearmed, is that a lot of places are going, offering high density, high numbers because that sounds better. As
Patients go, well, that's great.
yes, I've got a low hairline, it's full, but not seeing the future and the potential for future loss and the propensity
So
for that.
what you can do is a lot harder to undo, is one of the take-home messages today. It's a lot harder to undo it once it's been done.
Perfect. But I like that idea. We'll have to think about it. But again, be careful. Don't always. I know there's, undertaking a hair transplant procedure is very, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. There's a lot of emotion that goes into it, and cost becomes a significant factor as well. But if you're driven by cost, unfortunately, this is the risk of a potential outcome there. So I hope you found that useful. It's not to try and scare anyone or put them off, but just to be forewarned.
It may only happen occasionally, but it's devastating when it does.
And this person is absolutely, I cannot put into words, is beside himself, because this is just, it cannot live without a hat.
So doing the homework is not doing the social media homework. Doing the homework is talking to the surgeon.
Yes. All right, well, hope you found that useful. Thanks very much, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, guys and ladies.